Good morning, everybody. I hope you can hear me. Uh, Welcome to a series of our webinars that we've been hosting for the past 6 weeks. We are glad that you attending this webinar. If you are here for the first time, thank you for joining us. If you've been in our previous webinars, thank you for coming back. We hope that we provide value. Before we start, I just wanted to share like a little disclaimer. Everything we share here is based on our perception of things and based on what worked for us as a company. That's not a universal truth. That's just our experience that we would like to share with the hope that it might be helpful and beneficial to someone. Before we start, I would like to introduce you to the host of today. So we have Ayman, who is the Chief People Officer at Bayzat. He's been with Bayzat for over 1 year and has over 15 years of experience in the HR in multiple industries across UAE. He is now in charge of People and Culture department, works with the executive and leadership teams to bring the best out of Bayzat and make sure that we are on the right track to reach our mission. My name is Tanya, as some of you already know. I'm in charge of organization development and culture as Bayzat. I've been with the company for over 4 years and had 3 roles now at Bayzat, moving from sales to eventually to people and culture. And I'm focusing on the company's planning and also adopting company's culture to making sure that everyone lives to their fullest potential. Before we move in, if you are here for the first time, just a little glimpse of what Bayzat is. Bayzat is a work-life platform that benefits everybody by combining innovative HR, payroll, and technology with insurance. We create a platform full of world-class benefits that available to everyone, opening up new possibilities for your business. We are having over 1,000 companies working with us, insure over 30,000 lives, and have over 150 million in insurance premiums. On today's topic is how work-life will change post-COVID times and how we need to start preparing from now. And in our agenda, what we will be focusing on is just a couple of trends of the future of work, company culture as a differentiator in helping you to adapt to the future of work, and where you as HR or as the owner of the business can start already today. So without further let's move to the future of work. There are many trends that are shaping every industry around the world with the COVID, and probably the impact of COVID-19 is not really known to anyone, and there are a lot of speculations. Here I kind of focus on key four trends which really will be affecting everyone globally, but also will be affecting a lot UAE market in certain extents. And I wanted to focus on those because I think we all started to experiencing it from the time we went working from home. So the first trend is working from home becomes the new normal. There was a research where done where they asked the companies in Europe and US, and also the companies in Middle East and UAE specifically, how do you allow your employees to work from home once or twice a week or once or twice a month? And the percentage of company which said yes in Europe and US was 60%. A percentage of company which said yes in UAE was 10%. That obviously was before the COVID time, and suddenly, in 2020, we all were forced to move working from home without really knowing how to do it and without having all policies. Now, as we discover that it is actually possible, the employees will be demanding, a lot of them, to actually be allowed to work from home continuously, or at least combining that with some practices working from home and from the office. What that means to you is you, as a business, is adopting new processes and procedures to be able to effectively do that, building trust and connections, especially when people are not physically there. They don't see each other physically at all times, and they're not there, and leaders are not there to supervise and really check over their shoulders what they're doing at any given time. Introverts will strive. Extroverts might find it challenging, at least from our experience. After 7 weeks of lockdown, some people really, really wanted to go back to the office or go back anywhere, just really where they can meet people. And that's also the new reality where you will need to learn how to adopt and how to help every type of employee that you have. The second one is digital migration accelerates. I think it's been going on for years, and certain countries is much more faster migration. Everyone goes digital. The online business is booming, as well as the processes and procedures that you can do online and from remote setting. Quite frankly, UE was falling behind on this trend, and I remember when I was in sales, asking companies or explaining companies that there is a better way of doing things than Excel was really hard, because just the way we are all used to certain ways, and we want to keep doing things the way we always knew to be right. Well, now with this pandemic provided is the acceleration into really moving to digital. The customers are expecting you to be digital, so employees will also be expecting you to be digital. So going digital, going home, as I call it, and also upskilling your Gen X and in some senses Gen Y. New technology is difficult unless you are 20 years old. And if you are in your 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, it is difficult. And role of the HR person or a business owner to really support, not blame people when they don't know how to use technology, and really help them to transition to this time, to this step where using technology can be fun. The third trend is education goes virtual. So the challenge that possesses degrees no longer will mean a lot, but knowledge and skills will mean everything, because you could get that degree online. You could get just a certification, not really bachelor degree. So that no longer bachelor or master degree will not longer become the main point of your selection process, or something that you will be any consideration. On the other hand, employees themselves will be demanding more opportunities for growth and more opportunities for continuous education. Especially now, they know it's possible, and they know it doesn't cost a lot of money, so the company could be investing in that. Where before, if you want to get your company to sponsor your education, we were talking about one person, $10, $15, $20, $30,000, which obviously, if you're SME, you don't have that money. But now we are talking about, LinkedIn Learning, Coursera, where courses are $50, or subscription model where it's only $10 or $50 or $60 per month. And that changes everything. And that's something how you can keep your employees engaged. And the other one, we touched base on this before, it's the need for new type of leadership. The companies, obviously, if you are here, it means that your company is managing this crisis, and you are on the way to really come out strong of it, despite the obstacles and despite the struggles. I remember in the beginning of the crisis, there were three types of leaders out there: those who would panic and get paralyzed by the fear of what's going to happen, those who would live in a denial and just ignored everything what was happening till it hit hard, and those who really took a step back and started planning and really working, making sure that their business can survive. And that's the type of situational leadership that we need in the new era. Now job seekers have access to employers all around the globe. A lot of big companies exploring hiring from abroad and not bringing those people to the company and just working remotely. They know they can do it now. So that opens a lot of possibility and real war for talent. And fear is no longer an equation. If before people were really scared to lose their job, now psychologically, if you pass through this pandemic and you survive and you thrived, you have a very good success story for the rest of your life to know that you will be able to thrive in any environment. So you no longer will set settle for anything. You would want the best for yourself, and that's something to be aware of. And the last one, Generation Z especially, and even Generation Y, people expecting to be coached in a workplace. They no longer want managers, they want, or leaders, they want coaches, and that's a paradigm of new leadership. So those are the trends. There are many of them. There are many more which I didn't mention here. If you have business, you are thinking, right, so where, like, what do I do? So what matters in all of those trends? And the answer is to that question is focus on culture. Now, and I would like to pass to my colleague Ayman, who will share a little bit on what is culture and how this all ties together.
Good morning, guys. Hope all is well. So 2 things. Excuse the echo. I just moved into a new place and it's pretty much empty. I hope you can hear me well. If you don't, just let me know and I'll try to do something about it. And 2, excuse the beard. I'm using COVID lockdown as an excuse to keep growing it. The fact is I'm actually really enjoying it. So I hope it doesn't look as bad as I think it does. Okay, cool. So before we delve into this, guys, I'd like some participation from all of you. So there's a question on your screen that says, what is culture? Now, we all have different definitions in our head, and we've been told different things, and we've developed different definitions based on our experiences. So in a few words, in a sentence, use the chat box, just type in what you believe culture means. In a nutshell, no need to delve into too many details. And let's read out some responses. You can do so anonymously if you want, and let's just get the ball rolling from your responses. Margarita, thank you for being so active on here. So Ernesta, it is the social behavior of customs, the environment of the company, blend of values and beliefs, one's belief. Awesome. Behavior of people in the company. Which we continuously follow the existing life procedures to live. Okay, awesome. Live life for a group of people. Yeah. Yeah. So we went from environment, work environment, down to beliefs. That's a pretty broad spectrum. Anyone else? The normal things and how things are done that we see around in the environment of the industry. Collective behavior. Okay, cool. So the truth is, it's everything you just mentioned, right? And to summarize it, this is my favorite definition. It's very simple, but it has a lot of depth in its meaning. So it's a group's shared beliefs about how the world should work, right? Not works, should work, right? And the truth of the matter is we all come from different cultural backgrounds, especially in a place like Dubai. So we've all been conditioned based on multiple systems. So if you look at the way you've been conditioned by your school, your university, your parents, your socio-economic system, the country, the government. So all these kind of shape your beliefs. And the biggest shaper now, the more experience you have as a professional, is your organizational culture, right? So we develop truths, right? We develop truths about what we believe works and what doesn't work. I'm going to give you a very extreme example just to put some more context into this, right? And this is something I actually discussed with a friend of mine a few days ago. So let's say I worked in a company. Let's say I come from a very respectful family and we never hurt people and We always do good and well brought up and whatnot. So that's my pre-work conditioning, right? Now, once I enter the work life, that could be shifted. So if I joined a company for 10 years, right, and I see all leaders around me who are just, slapping or punching or hitting their subordinates every time they do something wrong. Now, going very extreme, it doesn't happen, but just for the example's sake. Now, the first time it happens, I'm going to, question that. That's not aligned with my beliefs. But if I survive there for 10 years and I see it working, then now I'm adopting new beliefs to what works and what doesn't work. So that organizational culture shaped my beliefs right now, right? And now I'm part of that organizational culture. And that's something we all share in common, what we believe works, right? And that's a truth for us. So that's our culture. That's in a nutshell, right? So the truth is we all have a culture. Every single company who has been in existence for more than 3 months has already established a culture, right? Now, to what extent people know that it exists and to what extent they understand it is a whole different story, right? So a lot of people are intentional, or a lot of companies are intentional about creating and instilling a culture, while others don't even know that their culture exists, right? So that's a question we should start asking ourselves. Why? Because, now is the time where culture steps in. To a lot of people in this part of the world, culture was just a fluffy phenomenon, right? It was just a concept, a blurry concept that didn't make much sense. And it was, a bunch of values. It's nice. Let's get some beanbags here. Let's make some things nice and fluffy. But there's a much deeper meaning to what culture is, right? So the next slide will kind of show you. So this definition actually comes with from one of my favorite scholars in the whole field of organizational psychology and organizational culture. His name is Edgar Schein, right? So you guys can actually research him. So Edgar came up with these 3 levels of what culture really is. So when we talk about environment and we talk about, structure or processes or, our beanbags, our open space, our small talk, our corridor talk, what we wear, our dress code, our working hours, all these are very artifactual in nature. And unfortunately for some companies, it stops there. So when you ask a company, what's your culture like? They'll start describing these artifacts that they have in place, superficial in nature, right? Now, it's a good thing to have, and it's a must-have, but only if they reflect the deeper layer, which is your values, right? So your values doesn't necessarily mean your values or your principles. It means your strategies, your deeper goals, your deeper aspirations, your philosophies about what works, your justifications to certain problems, right? So this is the deeper and it's a more fundamental layer of what culture is. So if the artifacts are aligned with the values, you're in good shape, right? Now, let's look at things from a leader's perspective, right? So if I'm a leader who has the right values in place and the right artifacts in place, but my assumptions or my beliefs or my truths are not aligned with what is in place, then I'm in big trouble, right? Especially right now. So let me give you an example right here. So let's say that I am a leader who preaches about, creativity all the time, right? I want creative people on board. I want people who come up with ideas and whatnot. Now, and let's say I have the full setup there. I have, the nice colorful walls, and I have the nice the values on paper to represent that creativity. Now, if I don't embrace that myself and it's not in line with my belief system, if I have been conditioned throughout my life to believe that creativity is just some fluffy concept that I'm trying to adopt from other organizations, then I'm going to fail, right? And the only reason you got away with it so far is because you had a physical space where people are being watched and being forced into doing what you're asking, right? Right now, people are working remotely. So everyone's assumptions at the deepest layer of culture have to be aligned. And that takes a lot of self-awareness, right? An extreme level of self-awareness. Can we move on to the next slide, Tanya? So to give more real life context here, what you see in front of you is one of the Bayzat principles. So at Bayzat, we have 6 principles, guys. And this is actually one of our favorite, me and Tanya, actually, we decided to use this one as an example, right? So value debate over consensus, and that's who we are. I mean, it's a pretty powerful statement, and it's not very easy to implement if you don't have the right beliefs and commonalities in place about how the world works, right? So unfortunately, this part of the world, there's a lot of people who view debate as a taboo or a bad thing, especially when it comes to upper hierarchy, right? So I will never debate with the CEO. I will never debate with my leader. I will never debate with the directors of the company, because that's not right, okay? So if our CEO and me and the rest of the executive team view debate as a taboo, as most of societies do, and we try to implement this, then we're in big trouble, guys, right? So let's break through this. The best ideas are polarizing, disagree, commit, execute. The quality of ideas generated is the most predictable path to quality, and use the first principles thinking. So to sum all this up, I mean, this requires a very flat and non-hierarchical mindset or belief system. It promotes confidence, speak up, so a very individualistic style of being. It requires me to trust my own thought processes and be willing to step out of comfort zones, right? Of best practices or things that are, viewed as absolute truths. It requires me to critically think and analyze everything around me, whatever it is, right? That takes a very special kind of person. And if I'm recruiting people or trying to lead people who are not aligned with that, then all this is a principle on paper, and I will suffer during a remote setup, right? Because nobody will be able to exemplify this and put this into action because they don't believe it. They don't believe that that's the way things should be done, right? So as I said, we need to build self-awareness, right? About what we really truly believe in. What are our truths? And how aligned are we right now today with those truths, right? What are we trying to build? What are we trying to promote? Are we trying to build something that we are are we mimicking another organization that's successful? Maybe I'm reading a book about, some successful company that's in the same industry as me, and this is their culture and this is their belief system. A lot of companies are trying to mimic that, but their own belief system doesn't reflect it, right? So that's where the divergence is going to hurt most people during this time of remote work and isolation. And what we're doing right now, guys, during COVID is we're developing a new global truth. The whole culture of the world is changing. And that truth is that remote work works. It works. We always questioned it. I mean, what Tanya said, 10% of the UAE are willing to do remote work. Now they were forced into it, and they're like, wait a minute. A lot of companies are thriving and even being more productive with remote work. No more distractions. No more small talk. No more going outside for a smoke. No more, getting bored or wandering around, going for lunch or wasting time. No more inefficiencies and distractions. People are on it and they're productive. So we had a hypothesis that we were never willing to challenge, and now we were forced to kind of put it into practice, and it works. So what comes after this, culture has to go from a non-fluff concept into the core of everything that we're doing in our day-to-day work. Our entire existence and our survival will depend on how strong our culture is and how aware we are of our cultures, right? What that takes, going beyond recruiting the right people and going beyond attracting the right people, it's also about our existing people, right? So if I come to this realization that this is who I am and this is the culture I need to align with in order to represent who I am, then people need to be on board. So the truth is, at Bayzat, for example, we have 35 different nationalities on our team. That's a lot of nationalities. That's a lot of different beliefs and systems. And you can't expect everyone to adopt what you're instilling in the company just generically and, because you said so. That's not the way the world works. If you try that, then your values or your culture is just, as good as the piece of paper they're on, right? So what we need to do now is coach. And now that's why now coaching is replacing the whole concept of leadership. So leadership evolved. Look at, everything from the industrial era where everything was about instruction and management, right? And then it evolved into leadership, empowerment, and all these nice concepts. And now that's even evolving to coaching, right? Where it's no longer about your leadership style or what you think works. It's about what people want to do and what they believe works, right? And the truth is, once we survive this COVID-19, people's mentality is going to shift forever, right? So the entire mindset of people is going to take a major shift. So a lot of people were in jobs because they want to survive, right? On Maslow's hierarchy, they just have that need, that physiological and safety need for survival. So they just want to get paid and do the job and do whatever people say, and they will tolerate cultures that don't match them, right? Now, once they survive the biggest crisis that ever hit humanity during their existence and pull through it and come out still alive, now they have a new truth, which is they will no longer fear and they will no longer remain in a job out of fear, and they have a global workforce now, global options to choose from, right? National borders are being diluted, which means that I don't have to worry about locality. I don't have to worry about finding a job in UAE. The global truth is remote working is working. So I can find a job anywhere in the world that suits me and allows me to be the best version of myself. Whether that's in Singapore or in the States, it doesn't matter because I can do it remotely. And that's going to be a very rapid shift in mindset. So as employers now, and as companies, we're competing against the world and not against our market or our small geographical location, right? And that's a big statement. Now, in order to coach people, we need to understand the fundamental meaning of engagement. And again, a lot of people have this term engagement as a very fluffy concept in their heads, right? Engagement means giving people free lunches. Engagement means, providing people with extra benefits. Engagement means doing fun things at work and playing games. That's not engagement. So those are temporary pleasures that disappear after a few moments, right? That's more on the happiness level. So happiness is a temporary state that will come and go all the time, right? If I provide you with a free lunch, you'll be like, yay, great culture. And then something bad will happen and you go back to the original mindset. Right? That's not engagement. Those are pleasantries, right? Happiness, temporary states. And this image in front of you represents engagement. And let me spend a couple of minutes going through it. Tanya, how are we with time? Good, okay. So guys, if you look at the axis here, right? One is the challenge level, right? And one is the skill level. So take any employee or take yourself and let's apply this, right? So imagine you have a very high skill level. So you're extremely skilled and you're extremely strong in certain aspects, right? And let's say you're given a job or your role in the organization is a very low challenge level, right? Extremely low, which means there's incongruence between your skill and the challenge. So what happens in these states, right? What happens is at the end of the spectrum where it's extremely low, what happens is you get bored because you're not doing what you're meant to be doing. You're not utilizing your strengths. You're not putting them into action. So you get really bored. You're doing low-level stuff that's not aligned with your capability. And that's 90%, right? And that's gonna even magnify way, way more in a remote setup. Why? Because people who were traditionally bored under one physical space, right, would still work. Why? Because they're being physically watched. And they're feeding off their direct environment around them. People are around, their boss is watching, their boss's boss is watching, other departments are watching. So even when they're bored, they'll push themselves. Now that there's nobody watching them and they're bored, nothing will get them to work, right? Because they're not engaged. Past boredom gets relaxation, right? So the challenge is, okay, it's a bit more. I'm not that bored, but I'm too relaxed, right? And that goes with control as well. Or I'm in control of everything. Nothing's a crazy challenge. So my skills are being activated and my strengths are being activated, but to a cap that I would prefer to be a bit higher, right? So that means I'm in my comfort zone. And that's a big no-no, right? For organization to thrive, you need to make sure that the person is outside of their comfort zone and constantly challenging themselves to get your best ROI, right? Now let's look at the other end of the spectrum, which is also very common. Now imagine your skill level is still low, right? Or who I am today, my skill level today is lower than the challenge at hand, right? So my job role is very challenging, but I don't have the skills to fulfill it. Now, what does that cause? The other end, if you look at it, anxiety and arousal and worry. And these are states that are fear-derived states. When I'm anxious, I'm scared. When I'm worried, I'm scared. When I'm aroused, I'm scared, right? So what that causes is a drop in productivity out of fear, right? So our job as leaders is to ensure constant engagement by maintaining a state of flow, where the stars are in that picture. It says flow. That state of flow is when your strengths are aligned to the challenge. And challenges, organizational challenges and complexity is constantly evolving. So the challenge today is not the same as the challenge yesterday. So our jobs in leadership, in HR, as CEOs, is to ensure that people's skills and strengths are constantly being evolved and updated in line with the challenges at hand and the evolution of those challenges. Otherwise, people are going to get bored or anxious, both of which would lead to underproductivity or a lack of productivity, and they will either get fired or they will leave for being bored, right? So our job is to coach them. And coaching means unlocking people's potential to maximize their performance. So unlocking, not instructing. So helping them to learn and not teaching them. So the whole instructional style, do this without a why, will not work anymore, right? Because they're no longer being watched. Now is the era of coaching, and now is where people need to understand these concepts and embrace them as the next evolution of what leadership really is. We need to be raising people's awareness, right? Through powerful questioning, powerful coaching, in order for them to take accountability for their own success. We can no longer tell them what they need to do. Look at these new generations, Gen Z, and even millennials, right? If I could sum up everything they want purpose, right? They want to fulfill their potential. The only reason they would stay somewhere where they're not fulfilling that potential was fear. So in order to be able to do that, leaders need to start building trust with their people. And I mean trust on a whole new level than we've ever known before, right? And unfortunately, more Eastern societies have this notion or belief that my people trust me, right? But there's a difference between my people trust me or my people respect me, right? And to give you more context here, we're running out of time. I'm gonna speed through this. Tanya, can you move to the next slide, please? So guys, everything you see on the screen right here are cultural dimensions, which have been developed and researched by a scholar of the name of Geert Hofstede, right? So Hofstede is a pioneer in national culture, right? So he did 10 years or 15 years of a research study, which is until today the biggest study ever done in cultural dimensions. And he came up with the first four, if you see them: power distance, individualism, masculinity, and uncertainty avoidance, right? So for the sake of trust and differentiating between trust and respect, let's talk about the first one, power distance. We can have a whole other session about the rest in a different webinar. So power distance is the extent to which a society basically accepts the truth that power is unequally distributed amongst members. So people accept that power comes with rank and title, right? So a high power distance society would believe the boss is right. I will never question the boss. I will execute what I'm told because he has the title. And this is not wrong or bad. This is just society. the way society has been run for years, they have this belief, right? Other individualistic countries, other Western countries like the US, which is the purple one, are much lower. So they don't associate power with rank. So they're willing to speak up more and they're willing to take initiative themselves without being told what to do, right? So this part of the world, when you have a very high power distance, then people naturally respect you because of your title. That doesn't mean they trust you, right? And now what trust means is a whole new level of trust. That means leading through vulnerability, humanizing the leader-subordinate relationship, letting your people know that you are human. You're not a leader, you're not a title, you're not a rank. You're a human being who has the same fears, similar anxieties, and you need help as much as they do. So things we do, for example, is that we ask people for help, regardless of their title. We ask people for feedback, criticize my leadership skills. I don't care what his title is. If he has something valuable to add to me, I want to hear it. Title means nothing, right? And you will lose that power of hierarchy and structure when you move into a remote setup, right? So build trust by leading through vulnerability, guys. Humanize the relationship as soon as possible, especially if you want to retain your A players and thrive and survive as a company. That's it from my side. Thank you so much. I hope I didn't go over the time limit. Tanya, I'll pass over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ayman, for the insights. Just to sum up a bit what Ayman was talking, is basically building the culture to really represent true your company, your beliefs, what your mission, what you're trying to achieve, and not just something nice that was created by marketing to put on a website. Focusing on developing leaders so they can develop your employees and they can help your employees to thrive and be in the flow and being engaged, and then building trust as a first step to really engage your employees. And you probably wonder, I mean, those are all great concepts, but what's a tangible things? Where do I start? And those are just like examples of, look of how Bayzat, we've done it, and me being in a company for over 4 years, I've seen this transformation and was part of that transformation. So number one, going digital, researching on tools available and taking really holistic approach. And you don't have to wait when the entire company will be willing to do that. As a department, you can start doing that. And the reality is actually adopting a new technology, although it costs some money, it actually saves you money in the long run, and it changes the way you do things. You become more productive, and just like learning and proving that concept and proving proposal forward will change, the way the department is viewed and the way the budget gets allocated. So researching on the tools that you need to be more productive and focus really on people, which is at the core of what a HR department should be doing, or as a manager, and also upskilling yourself and your team, just looking always for new technology, for new things coming up, how they might be interesting to adopt, giving a trial, learning new things would really help. The second one is understanding your culture. So now thinking really whether the culture you have, does it stop at the artifacts level, or does it go deeper? If it's deeper, is it connected? Is what you preach on a deeper level, is it actually, like, are you connected that on their artifact level? And I give you an example here from Bayzat. So we preach, debate over consensus and feedback and open feedback. And we want people to be able to come and speak up. The reality is, because of the high power distance country, it took us a lot of time. It actually took us years for people to be able to do that through constant training, support, coaching. But also, like, when it comes to the survey that we release, every time we release an anonymous survey, we get much more truer results. Every time we release a survey where people need to put their name, suddenly the answers are more blurred. And understanding that and actually saying, okay, well, our goal actually as a P&C department is making sure that everyone feels comfortable to put their name and really give us the thoughts they really want to give, versus the thoughts we kind of perceived perceived truth. And that takes a lot of work. And, you know, every time we release a new survey and we see more people putting their names, we are like, this is success for us. We are moving in the right direction. And our goal is to actually have everyone being willing to put their names where they're not forced to, but because they really stand for what they wrote there. So this is just an example of how we really embracing our culture from on all level and walking with people to do that. Live the best version of your culture. So I really like the concept of the basement and the balcony. So you could be living your culture from the basement or from the balcony. Balcony is when you take the culture and you just do the best version of it and really embrace it. And the basement is you either don't implement it, although you understand it, or you overdo it or you underdo it. And you just think that, yeah, we have a culture, but people don't agree with it or they don't really live it. So implement it, but it takes time and takes a lot of consistent effort. And it doesn't have to be a big effort, it can be small chunks of things that are happening consistently and eventually will adopt the culture. Recruit based on cultural fit. A lot of companies recruit just based on previous performance and the current job fit, but they don't recruit based on the cultural fit. And one bad apple gets everyone else in the basket rotted. That's the same way one person who is not cultural fit will ruin everyone else's life in the team, which obviously will lead to much bigger drop in the results than not hiring this good performer. Align your people to your culture and educate them about it, and also align your reward and recognition system to your culture. So how you recognize, how you give feedback, what do you tell people when they do a good job or when they need to improve. And the last one is focus on people. I mean, we touch base on coaching as a new norm and something that people will require. But in order to really understand what coaching is, get yourself a coach. I think especially now, there are so many opportunities and so many people opening up their doors of saying we either offer free sessions or we have a discounted price. And see for yourself if it works. I mean, both me and Ayman are coaches at Bayzat, and we're building coaching culture within our leaders and making sure that they are able to provide coaching to their team members. The other one is building trust, and you know, trust is different from respect. And the last one, when everyone works remotely, what matters the most is not the input of your work, but the output. It doesn't matter how many hours did you spend doing something, as long as you've done it and it's a high standard in a respected time. So having the planning methodology, which would allow you to be able to set clear goals and also have a tracking mechanism, how you're going to track those goals, will allow you to adapt much faster to an environment where people no longer sit in the office together. So those are just some thoughts in terms of how the world is changing, and you know, it might be different for different industry, and the speed will be obviously different and different for different size of companies and sizes, but eventually we're all gonna get there. So on this, I would like to just open. We still have a couple of minutes, so I would like to open for Q&A. You have the Q&A section on your screen, so you can ask us any questions. And we do have a questions from before, from Anushka. So Ayman, Anushka is asking, agreed, we can work from anywhere. However, isn't it important to be placed in the market you're working for in order to understand that particular geography's perspective and their audience?
I mean, I can answer that based on Bayzat, right? I mean, we have operational teams doing insurance work based out of India, and they were able to adapt and able to learn with the right mechanisms and infrastructure in place. So it depends really on the industry. It's very industry specific, but as a generic rule, no, I don't believe it. I believe people can learn about any market from any market. Tanya, you have something to plug in there as well?
I mean, for me, I'm looking from the perspective of the customer, right? So we are using a lot of different tools, like for recruitment, for you know, marketing purposes, and all of those tools are not based in UAE. So we got them from mostly like US companies, European companies, which means that people out there are able to sell to market in UAE, and they are perfectly fine doing it. They don't have to open the office to be able to do that. And they are able to service us, and we are able to stay with them. And we probably have like 15 different tools that we are using, and none of those tools are based in UAE. So that kind of gives the glimpse that not necessarily, of course, it's really industry specific. So and it might not be the case for the entire company. It might be the case just for a few people in the company as a starter, right? But for example, if you are a design studio, you might not necessarily need to be as a designer to sit in the office in UAE. You could be sitting anywhere. You could connect on a Zoom call with a client who doesn't have to travel to your office, can just connect via Zoom and save a time and maybe show their current apartment, how they want to change it, or the new project they are working on. So yeah, I think it's all on the spectrum. Some are, you know, it's will be more affected, some of that will be less affected. We have another question. If a culture is deeply engraved in an organization, should we as leader try to change it, or can we do it? It's very challenging to coach the current set of people. That's a good one. Very good question. Thank you. Akhil? Yeah.
Yeah, Akhil. Akhil, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Very good question. I mean, try to change it. You have to go take a step back first and see if you understand it, first of all, right? And like I said during my presentation, a lot of times we're trying to build or change something, or we have a sought out ideal of what our culture should be that's not aligned with who we are as human beings, as leaders, right? So figuring that out should be the fundamental step to take. And then if you figure out that the people you have on board right now are not aligned with your genuine self and what you truly inherently want to create, then you can start coaching accordingly, and you could adopt new recruitment practices and selection processes and behavioral tools to attract the right people to your culture as well, right?
The reality, if you know, the reality is, as you Ayman said, that you know, once you understand your culture and you try, like you actually preach, people who don't really respect that culture will eventually leave by themselves.
Did that answer your question, Akhil?
And also, I think in my belief, when I think about everything, and we usually have debates with Ayman about that, when I look at someone who is struggling at Bayzat, I look at all possibilities of why that might be the case and how we could help. And I would only say, it's like, okay, we've done everything possible, when I really exhausted a lot of options, versus just trying, one option and just saying, oh, this person not coachable. Not really. Like, they might need more time to actually adopt to the new style or adopt to new culture. But it will require a lot of trying and errors and a lot of consistency from you.
Also, another point. It's very easy for us human beings to blame, right? So someone who's not doing well, or people who are misaligned when it comes to job design, so they're not in the right job that reflect their strengths and capabilities, they will not blend into your culture no matter what you do, right? Because they're disengaged, right? So a lot of time we've seen, even in our organization, a shift in job or an awareness of strengths and aligning a job to meet those strengths, creating a new context for an individual, the whole perception changes, right? So it's very contextual as well. So you might have someone who will blame your culture and blame everything you're doing and blame management for underperforming, when in fact they're just in the wrong job and they're not activating the right set of skills. When you as an HR department, as a function, have an awareness of this, and you're able to take people's strengths, understand them, and put them into the right roles in order for people to be engaged, then their perception of the culture itself will also change.
Any more questions? Anyone has?
40 people, guys. I'm sure you have questions. Otherwise, I was just boring. I hope I wasn't boring. Come on, guys, you can do it. We have 10 minutes. No questions?
Well, in case if you're typing or out of questions or maybe need more time to think, if you have any questions or, this webinar will be posted on bayzat.com under COVID. Again, the recording will be there, as well as if you need, if you suddenly have a questions or need some resources, feel free to reach out to us at Tanya@bayzat.com and Ayman@bayzat.com. We'll be able to happily help you or guide you through some of the things that we tried. And we have another general comment: remote work is more applicable on service industry. Yeah and no. Yeah.
Yes and no, Maqsood. Yes and no. I mean, if I used to work in the food industry, right? I used to lead the HR department for a major food restaurant company over here. So the general consensus several years ago was that, yes, this is a non-remote, it's a very physical industry. But the truth is, look at how this industry has evolved just over the past couple of years, and even more now during COVID, right? Look at how many virtual concepts are up there. People running kitchens from, their phones and their laptops on their mobiles. Look at all the dark and central kitchens that are out there, right? It's becoming much more remote friendly, right? Even industries that we thought were absolutely impossible to work remotely are adapting to this new reality. So it is possible, and completely agree that it's going to take, a major shift for that to change, but the change is slightly happening right now. But
yeah,
agreed.
One thing which came to my mind, the webinar we shared a couple of weeks back, is actually hospitals going virtual. So, something that you would a few years ago think that it's a nonsense. And I think UAE is still in the early stages, but for example, in Canada, my friend broke her leg in a very remote, ski area in Canada. So obviously no hospital or no doctor. She actually was taking a picture herself of her feet and sending to the doctor, and then having a Zoom call, and then pressing the way, she was guided by the doctor to actually determine what is with her, and how the doctor, what's the cause of action for her further. So even hospitals to a certain extent going virtual. It's not going to ever be fully virtual, but it's definitely happening and will be happening. Apart from email and video calls, what tools can organizations use to emphasize a company emails and video calls? What tools can organizations use to emphasize a company culture? I mean, it's not the tool that you use is really, for me, it's the communicate, what you communicate in those, emails, in those video calls. How consistent is your message? Are you looking at that holistically, or you're just communicating a lot of different things at the same time? So we have at Bayzat, we almost have a rule that we don't communicate more than 3 things at a time, in terms of feedback, in terms of recognition, in terms of any new information, just to focus people's attention and mind. An example would be, we had our monthly newsletter, which went out last week, and Ayman had an intro message about achievement principles. So one of our 6 principles is achievement principle, and seeing and reflecting on that one. This week, again, our CEO sent a memo about achievement principle, and then I run the all-hand meeting. Again, something related to achievement principle, but in different way. So if you think about it, we had the 3 different means of communication, all focusing on one thing. And it might sound insane, but this is the only way you can actually guarantee that people will hear because some people wouldn't read the memo, some people wouldn't will be on vacation when you have all hands, and some people will not read the newsletter. So this way, when you think you're over communicating, you probably still under communicating. Yeah, so that's my take. Oh, we have a lot of questions, so great. Inessa, Tanya, how did Bayzat culture change over years? What prompted your company to change? How did your leaders, management react to this change initially? So I joined the company when we were 15 people, and we did not had anything written about our culture. So 1 month after I joined, we actually put a first set of values for ourselves. And that was working very nicely, because we those values which were put, we involved everyone, all 15 people back then, to co-create and say, well, why Bayzat is different, asking different questions, and created those values together. When we were prompt to change was in 2018, when we became a team of over 100 people, and living values are very static, right? So you either have this value or you don't. And they help you to recruit the right type of people to your company. But what they don't help you is when you have become a big organization and you suddenly need to take decision on your own without asking the C-level all the time, when you need to encourage certain behaviors that are maybe against their nature, like debate. That's where we started adopting principles. So we completely went away from values, and we now had 5 principles, and we added a new principle in January of this year. How did leaders, management reacted to this change? I mean, we had a communication, and many people were involved, part of it. So many people were giving feedback on the leadership. Then there was a lot of initiatives to actually support that change, and also our reward and recognition system and initiatives change based on the new culture. I mean, I don't think like now 2.5 years later that we adopted everything. It's work in progress, really. New sets of people come, some people leave, new people come, and you need to start over again, or you need to add different things. Yeah. Great. I'm just reading through your question. The Hofstede cultural dimension is quite interesting and quite accurate for UAE. My question is what you as a company need to break this deeply rooted concept, especially for some nationalities that live in UAE. And I do not look at it as discrimination, but different cultural backgrounds. Totally understand your question. Ayman, would you like to kind of jump into this?
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, we're recruiting based on certain beliefs and certain behaviors. And in a nutshell, I mean, another word for culture on an individual level is personality, right? So all we're doing is recruiting the right personalities for our organization. So the same, I mean, your set of beliefs is your personality, right? So all we're doing is, first of all, understanding what it is we need and what we're looking for, and then hiring the right people, right? So it's not really about breaking any deeply rooted concepts. It's about looking for people that we want and we understand would help us thrive as an organization. It's not about taking these dimensions and using them as a basis for our recruitment practices, not at all. It's about breaking down our principles, our 6 principles, understanding what behaviors are extracted out of these underlying behaviors are extracted out of them, right? So in order to debate, you need to have a certain level of confidence, you need to, a certain level of individualism, a certain level of critical thinking, right? And we break those down into selection criteria, and then we take the right tools and processes in order to recruit these people. That's it.
Yeah, and I think the fact that Bayzat we have so many different nationalities, so the goal is not to really have a try to mix people up a bit, so they learn from each other, not necessarily adopt each other ways of living, but just learn and maybe become a little bit open, right? If you see for someone who is just can't talk back to the leadership, but his colleague can, it will give him a little bit reassurance that he could also potentially do that. Maybe he will not say in the exact same words, he for sure wouldn't. He would be much nicer. Maybe he wouldn't even talk, he would just send an email, but that will happen. So we have 32 nationalities, and we obviously have some dominant nationalities, the same as you know, the geography of UAE, but all in all, what we tried is, you know, saying the principle, like emphasizing on principles and respecting people's culture, and also mixing and letting them learn from each other and work in different groups with different mindsets, so they are more exposed. Yeah.
It's really tricky. I mean, the only thing that bonds us together, 32 or 35 nationalities, are those 6 principles. And if someone doesn't have a system that, you know, is in line with those principles, or someone's not willing to speak up and debate, then it all depends on our reactions as leaders and coaches on what we do when they actually try it, right? So if someone has this fear of debating, and then they try to have a small debate, but we shut them down as a leader, then we just made it worse, right? So we need to actually practice what we're preaching as well as leaders.
A couple of more questions. Who would you involve as a key player in cultural change? Ayman, do you want to talk up on that?
Yeah, I mean, the best way I would look at it is, culture is, you know, our collective programming, right? It's a part, it's an extension of everything and everybody together, right? It's who we are collectively. So the change, if it's genuine and it reflects who we are as an organization, it will come from all around. But I mean, from the top down would be the most effective approach, because leadership would be a representation, and their beliefs would be completely aligned with whatever we're trying to instill. But if they're not aligned, then it's going to be an impossibility, whether it's top down or bottom up.
Yeah. Another question, as you mentioned, recruitment based on cultural fit, how can you ensure that? Can you give a broader perspective on that? I mean, for me, like, I mean, Ayman will probably add something, but I think we have our principles, and we extract from those key competencies that people need to have when they join Bayzat, and we question people based on those competencies to see whether they have them or they don't. So we ask people open-ended questions, which provoke them to share the story. As they share the story, we are able to distill whether they have that competency or not. So example, when was the last time you received feedback? Could you describe what was the feedback? How did you take the feedback? What happened after? And a lot of people's like, oh yeah, like, you know, I just left it there. I didn't think it was necessary. So like, people really are themselves an interview. So you are able to extract a lot of things if you really listen, and you ask good questions to really prompt them to share. And we also have a bank of questions. So then even our team leaders can have different questions that they can ask based on those competencies. So they can kind of check whether people have those. Ayman, you would like to add something?
Yeah, I mean, we mix things up a lot, Angela. So, for example, we have panel interviews where we have a couple of executives join. We have one-on-one interviews. We have assessment centers where we actually watch people in action, which is very, very, very helpful, right? So if I'm looking at a group of people that we give them an assignment, I can easily see how willing this person is to, you know, put our 6 principles into action. Right? If they don't agree with something, are they giving feedback? Are they self-aware? Are they debating ideas in a very healthy, non-argumentative manner? So all these things that we look for, you can see when you put people together in an assessment center. So that's very helpful. So all we want is a very authentic approach to allow people to practice and allow people to show what they have and bring to the table. And, you know, I've been in recruitment and HR for a very long time, and I know how easy it is to be fooled in an interview. People can say the right things, practice, and be, you know, coached on how to interview well, and they come and say all the right things and fool you into, you know, thinking, wow, they're a superstar. And then once they join, it's the exact opposite. So you need to give them the right context to bring out their real selves, and how that looks and what the real self is or should be is based on your values or your principles or your culture, right? And you just need to organize yourself well with the right scenarios, right assessment centers, right group activities to bring out all these things, right? So it's very contextual, but it's quite an extensive process, to be honest. Happy to, if this is a topic of interest, we can arrange a webinar to tackle this on its own.
Just the last two questions from the audience is, there are a lot of industries which are heavily dependent on like moving people to work. If people stop moving to work, like that will obviously change those industry and they will be struggling. How do you think this is going to affect those global industries and people's livelihood? I think, in my opinion, to be honest, and just my opinion, like I think those companies will have to adopt and they will have to open new products that they never thought about and start new things. So an example of that is the other day I looked at Airbnb. So Airbnb is the global provider of accommodation for people who travel. Obviously, with the lockdown, there is no one who needs Airbnb. So their business went from whatever 100 to 0 overnight. And in most of the countries. So they started hosting webinars, providing a local experience of cooking meal together with the local in another country. So in a way, offering a virtual reality with those hosts. So you pay a little bit of money to attend, a cooking session and learn about how those people live. Instead of staying in their house. So this is just like some of the innovation. So I mean, everything will change. Like it's, the industry will have to redesign themselves or they will go out of business. Some construction will still be happening. Maybe it will change, if everyone works from home, then it will change to, or from the cafes, then providing more public spaces and cafe places and building bigger houses with a special office area. So designs of the house. So yeah, it just will adopt.
Yeah, I mean, rapid evolution. You need to evolve and adapt to the current scenario as fast and quick as possible. How agile you are to do that is how well and quickly you're going to survive and thrive.
Yeah. Zaim asked how many countries we are present. So we operate out of 3 countries, which is India, Turkey, UAE, and we have, 3 physical offices, 1 for each country. And a very good question was your perspective on employees working remotely before COVID and after. I mean, for Bayzat, we allowed working from home to a certain extent. We never had a policy about that, but a lot of people were able to do that, maybe not every week, maybe once a quarter or once a month. What we realized, we actually sent out the survey, which highlighted that people productivity has grown or remained the same after moving remotely. So yeah, for us, it really worked to our benefit.
What percentage? I think this is a game changer for us, right? And for most companies who did it the right way, I think. We planned well, we put the right resources in place, we put the right communication tools in place, we set up a BTP. So we took all the right steps a long time ago, way before COVID became a problem or lockdown took place. And those steps allowed us to thrive from day one. So the transition was very, very rapid and smooth. And now you have time and full awareness and understanding of what needs to be done, and you just smash it. So a lot of companies didn't have that kind of a smooth transition, and now they're dreading this whole working from home thing. They don't have the right tools or mechanisms or structures in place to be able to work remotely. So it all depends on the company, but for Bayzat, I believe more than 50% of the company will remain with this flexibility to work from home.
Yeah, yeah. Last question from Akil in terms of concerns in terms of you see the changes needed, you are on board, but through this change you'll upset so many people who've been in an organization for a long time and serve organization for a long time. How do you go about that?
Sorry, I can't see the question.
It's the last question on the screen.
the fear that the promoters have in any cultural changes?
I mean, while Ayman is reading, Akil, I think like I was managing the integration process between Bayzat and the brokerage firm that we bought out a couple of years back, and the cultural differences were drastic. We're two completely different companies, and we offered a lot of communication reassurance to people that they would not lose their jobs as the result of this change, as long as like they are able to move with us one step at a time. We kept moving. We knew it was the right thing, and we kept moving. And some people on the way decided to leave. After spending in the company for many, many years, it's sad, but also on one hand, obviously, you feel like you've done something wrong, like you betrayed your friend, because they've been with you for 15, 20 years, and suddenly they come to you and just say, all the thing that you come up with, I'm not on board. It's not for me, I'm leaving. It's sad in the short term and it hurts personally, but on the long term, it's what will make your company thrive. As long as it's not, they took the decision, some people will leave, and this is just to accept before any change starts. With any change, some people will leave, and this is reality.
Yeah, and as a CEO, I'll say it straight and blunt as it is. A lot of CEOs or leadership teams want to implement change because it's in their best interest, right? And what they fail to do is address the WIFM. So the what's in it for me to the people, right? So change needs to be linked with success, and change is good, right? You can't enforce it. So once they start testing things and seeing positive returns on what's in it for them by adopting this change, then you have a successful mechanism in place, right? It's not only about what you want and what you think should be done in order to thrive in a business. You have to address what's in it for them to implement this change. And that kind of communication, a lot of time, is the bridge between successful organizational adaptation and unsuccessful, right? So make sure you address the what's in it for them and align success with that change as you drive it.
Cool, thank you guys. I mean, we went way over time, so thank you for staying with us. I know some people left because of the time, but I'm happy that you guys stick around, and the questions were really powerful. The recording will be posted at Bayzat, so you can revisit it. And of course, if you have any questions, please send us email. We'll be happy to connect with you outside of this webinar.
Thank you so much, guys. It was a pleasure, and see you next time.